Hello, good afternoon and welcome. My name is Andrew Marsh and welcome to session 30 of Talking Asperger's with Andrew. And today I'm going to talk about quite an important topic that should be relevant to all businesses, whether they employ people with Asperger's or not. And that is meeting etiquette. And you're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, but we know what we do in our meetings. And you might be right, in which case, congratulations. But I have been in so many meetings where they have been very poorly run, which has, for me as someone with Asperger's, got very frustrating, very difficult to cope with lots of people talking over each other and everything. So I wanted to just go through some of the basics, which I hope that most of you are familiar with, but if not, it's a good refresher. And these are things that help someone who has Asperger's be able to be calm, be collected, be able to contribute to the meeting in the right way so that it goes smoothly and everyone gets their say. So the first thing with a meeting, obviously, it's an agenda. And you would be surprised how many meetings I've been to and there haven't been agenda. So an agenda, really important. You have to set out what it is you're going to talk about and do that one step at a time, one item at a time. It's generally best to have an agenda that's no more than 6 or 8 items. If you're going to have 12, 15 items on your agenda, then potentially it should be something you just split into 2 meetings rather than one, because people are going to get overwhelmed with so much information, so much going on. The purpose of a meeting is to move a project forward so that at the end of the meeting, you know what you're doing next week, next day, next month. So you don't want to be in a situation where you've had too many things to discuss that people aren't paying attention to it, aren't concentrating properly, and people lose the value of being in the meeting. It shouldn't be somewhere where someone just gets to splurge out and talk for an hour. It should be organized and managed in a way that there is an agenda, you go through each point by point, and everyone is given the opportunity to talk. And that is really important. We'll come back to that a little later on. So an agenda, really important to have an agenda, not too many items. And I always tend to like starting off a meeting with, after the greetings and welcoming everyone, is to say, okay, what were the actions from last week and have we done them? So you would know from the notes of the meeting that you should have circulated with the agenda before the meeting, should have said that earlier. Always send the agenda and the notes of the previous meeting to everyone before the meeting so that they've got an opportunity to comment and they know what it is going to be discussed. So I will always like to go through actions from last meeting. So there will be actions on either specific people or specific companies to act on something, to develop something, to answer a question, answer a query, clarify a design issue or whatever it is. And then you would say to that person, okay, this action was on you. What have you done? Have you actioned that item and what is the outcome of that? And go down your list. The list of the notes of the meeting should have an action section on the right hand side of the minutes. So you would just go down them one by one. There's an action on you. Have you done that item and what's the status of that? And they'll say, yes, I've done it. I circulated it 3 days after the meeting and everyone's happy with it. Or we've had some issues with it, but we're getting to a resolution and we should have a resolution tomorrow or by next week. So it's always good to dot off these issues so that you're starting, you know where you've been and what has happened from the previous meeting. Really important, if you're dealing with anything that's construction related, whether it's a design or a construction issue, the next most important aspect is health and safety. Too many times I've seen health and safety pushed down the bottom of the agenda or not even put on the agenda at all, which is a big no. You've got health and safety is the most important thing. I know people talk about budgets and quality of work and all the rest of it, but health and safety is incredibly important, because if you go about doing things in a health and safety aware manner and you're complying with health and safety procedures, it's more than likely that you'll be doing it to a high standard, a good standard, and things will fall into place naturally. So health and safety, because if you get health and safety wrong, people get killed, people get injured, people have time off work, and you do not want that, because you're impacting on someone's life, their livelihood. They may, if they have an accident, they might not be able to work again for the rest of their life. So really important that health and safety is given a significant place in a meeting agenda and you deal with it properly, say, okay, we're going to be going on to a different phase of the project. There are additional hazards or new hazards that we haven't encountered before in this project, and discuss those so that everyone knows that the designer is given the opportunity to talk about how it's been designed. The contractor knows what they've been asked to build, and any issues that come out of that, say, well, we're a bit concerned about how you're going to do this or this aspect of it, and have that meeting and have that discussion, because it's really important. As an aside to that, there was back in the 1990s when I was working in construction, there was this statistic that came out from my health and safety manager from the company I was working for. And he said, if people complied with health and safety and did things in a health and safety aware manner, construction will be 4% cheaper or 4% more profitable to the construction companies. Now, back in the 90s, construction companies weren't making 4% profit per annum over the entire year. So on one project, they could make 4% profit just by being health and safety conscious and aware and doing things right, methodical, thinking about how they're going to do them. So health and safety should not be pushed to the bottom of the list and as an afterthought. So matters arising, health and safety, and then you go into the various aspects of the meeting, and they will be relevant to the topic that you're discussing. So some of the points I wanted to make about the meeting is, it's really important that the person who is leading the meeting, who's usually the client or the senior designer or whatever it is in your team leader, it's really important that that person manages and runs the meeting. Really important that they do that, because if they don't run and manage the meeting properly, you're going to have chaos. So by running the meeting properly, you set out at the beginning what you intend to, what your objectives are for this meeting, so that everyone gets the opportunity to speak their turn and address things that are relevant to them, or have questions about other aspects of whatever it is, the project that you're working on. So it needs to be led with a firm hand without being an overly dictatorial hand. But one of the things that I absolutely detested was, in a meeting of more than 3 or 4 people, quite often the people down the other end of the meeting from the chairman would be having a separate conversation about something. And that used to annoy the dickens out of me. You're in a meeting for a specific reason and for a purpose. Have one meeting, have one conversation. And to someone with Asperger's like myself, I'm trying to focus on what is going on. So I'm paying attention to who's leading the meeting and who's talking, and to have someone else somewhere down the table having a separate discussion about something with someone else is really annoying. It's unprofessional to start with, because you should be paying attention to what is going on, who is leading the meeting, and what they are talking about. So to have a separate discussion is a no-no. If you've got something to say and you don't feel that you're getting the opportunity, just say, excuse me, I'd like to talk about something that's quite important to me and relevant to what we're doing. And I'm sure that you'll be given the opportunity to speak about that subject at an appropriate time. So have one meeting. Don't have two meetings going on in the same place, because it might be that someone at the other end of the meeting table might have the key piece of information to the discussion that's going on at the other end of the meeting, and the things will be lost on them. So, excuse me. So having order in a meeting is really important. So that's what have I got here? Oh yes, firm leadership, progress statements. Sometimes in construction, we would have a progress statement that gives you an idea of where you are on a project. You might have those in your own projects that you have, that's a project of some length that might be several weeks or many months. You would have a progress statement. You would know from your overall program where you should be at this particular point in time. Are you on track? You've done 6 weeks work out of a 30-week program. Are you a fifth of the way through the project? Are you ahead of program? Are you behind? Or are there some areas that you're ahead, some areas that you're behind? And is that a concern? Is there a lack of information that's holding something back? Is there a lack of resources that's holding something back? So all of these things need to be nipped in the bud, discussed, and said, yeah, we're a little behind on that, but don't worry, someone is becoming free to be able to tackle that. We'll be back on track next week or next month, whenever your next meeting is. So it's really important that everything gets highlighted and discussed so that everyone around the table gets the opportunity to talk. And as someone with Asperger's, we will be concentrating really hard on what is going on and paying attention to what is going on. So we would like order and structure to a meeting, and that's where it's really important that the chairman of the meeting is firm and everyone understands what's going on. One of my clients, this particular point is an interesting one, is one of my clients used to insist that everyone turns their mobile phones off. And quite rightly, you are there to be in a meeting, so you shouldn't be there to be on your phone. And he actually, he actually said one time, if anyone phones goes off in the meeting, there'll be a £5 fine to our charity that we support. So if your phone goes off in a meeting, you're fined £5 and I'll collect the money today, now, in the meeting. And it always happened that at least someone's phone would go off in that meeting and they would have to pay the fine. And it's absolutely right. I completely support that view. You're in a meeting to have a meeting, and unless there are very mitigating circumstances, like let's just suppose your wife is heavily pregnant and you get the phone call that the waters are broken and something has happened and they need to go off. That's obviously a reason that might require you to be contacted during the meeting, but you would have a word with the chairman of the meeting beforehand and say, look, my wife's about to give birth. If the phone goes off, I'd appreciate it if I could take the call outside and deal with it. But other than that, or someone having life-saving surgery, there shouldn't be a reason why anyone has their phone on in a meeting. And I might be coming across a bit hard to people on that, but you are in a meeting for a purpose. You are there with 10 other people or whoever it is. Show some respect for the purpose that you're there and the other people in the meeting, and turn your phone off. There's most things that someone phones you about can wait an hour or 2 hours for the length of the meeting. And that actually brings me on to another point, and that is duration. Oh, the number of times I have sat in meetings that have gone on and on and on. And you almost lose the will to live. There'll be a coffee break or a tea break, but the meetings just keep going on. This is where you either need to have 2 separate meetings and split the meeting up into 2 separate meetings, have one on one day and one on another day, because you're going to lose track of what's going on. And there's going to be too many actions, too much going on. Or you cover some topics quite quickly, quite briefly, if necessary, and then get to the crux of what the topics are to be discussed. But having meetings that just go on and on and on, it actually turns out to be not very good for business, because everyone's time is being used, and it turns out it comes to a point where it's not being constructive, and people start to resent they're being in a meeting because one person or 2 people are going on and on and on about something. This again comes back to the leadership from the chairman. And if something is taking a particularly long time to hammer out and resolve, maybe suggest that topic is covered at a separate meeting, and have only the key people that need to be for that particular item in a separate meeting, resolve the issue, and then report back, rather than having all 10 people sat there listening to something that 2 people are going on about for half an hour or 40 minutes or something like that. That's not constructive. It might be important to the people concerned, and it might be important to the project, but you need to think how everyone's time is being used effectively in a meeting. So if you've got something that is going on too long, park it, put it aside, and have a separate meeting about that, and then report that back in the usual way. So that's another good goal about meetings, is to not have them too long. I know one project I was involved in, chairman would come in, he would sit down, he would say, this meeting will end in 1 hour. If we haven't covered everything, we'll cover it another time. So be concise, be precise, be accurate. This meeting will take an hour and then we will stop. And I like that. I think that's good. It shows that the chairman is in control. It shows that they're saying, right, this is the time that's allotted to it. Let's knuckle down and do this properly, rather than having long-winded conversations that don't get us anywhere. If something crops out of that needs to be addressed separately, do that, address it separately and report back. So that's another thing. Good, strong leadership deals with most of the issues that I've talked about in today's meeting. We just have a look down here. Use of visuals. Yes, this is quite important, actually. People like myself with Asperger's tend to get lost in great long written reports. Now, obviously, there should be some progress reports in any meeting that you have, if it's a project you're working on of any length of time. But have a short, précis statement, a 1 or 2 page, no longer than that, statement of progress that gives you percentage completion on various items, where you are, what the issues are, and discuss that at the meeting. If there are, if it needs to be that someone needs to stand up and present, then have a flip chart or a blackboard or a whiteboard where they can make salient points of key issues, bullet points, or maybe draw a diagram just to highlight what is being discussed, and so that you can deal with it, and everyone around the table can understand it. So that helps this person with Asperger's understand what's going on with a small diagram or an image or bullet points. And again, it's progressing the meeting forward in the right way without overdoing and over talking about a particular point. So that's really important, to have visuals to break things up. And it might just be, certainly in construction, my favorite way of talking about a problem was to get a drawing of the subject, the general arrangement of the area concerned, and just mark it up. And I would usually have that myself for the meeting, so that if anyone asked about it, I could produce the drawing. And that's what engineers do in construction. We talk around drawings, we talk about drawings. And so you could sit them, have it marked up, have it color coded with different crayons and pencil colors. Doesn't need to be fancy, just needs to be neat and shows what's going on. So using visuals with color is a very good way of keeping the person with Asperger's engaged, so that they're not getting lost in too much long written reports. So I've talked for quite a while now about some meeting etiquette, and these are things that they serve 2 purposes. As I said earlier, and I keep harping back to it, it shows good management by the chairman of the meeting, and that he's in control and everything runs smoothly. But all of those things help the people with Asperger's understand what is going on, get a grasp of what the other issues that aren't necessarily their focal point, but they don't get lost in the detail. And that helps the person with Asperger's stay calm, stay focused on what's doing, rather than something going on and on and on for 2 or 3 hours, and they'll get lost, because their attention will, although they have good focus, many of them do, they will get lost because of too much detail, too much information, and that will cause them to get agitated, and which will then lose focus, and they might get picked on as that they're not paying attention, when actually they've got too much going on in their head because they've had information overload. So that is some basic points that I have about meeting etiquette and how it can help people with Asperger's, but also how it can help the meeting progress and move the project forward with good, strong leadership from the chairman. So I was going to ask Damien on if there's any comments you wanted to add to what I've said there about.
Yes, I agree that good leadership is important. I've been in good meetings and bad meetings, but one of my pet hates is when a meeting ends and okay, it's finished, so I'll leave, and then people start talking, and then you hear later that something's been decided. It's not on the minutes, but then you just ask, when was that decided? And they said, in the chat after the meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that when a meeting's end, then someone should close it and summarize, yes. And that's what's in the meeting. If you want to discuss something else, then it should go through the correct procedure. Yes. Either you write an email, a response to the meeting minutes, or something, rather than a discussion that's very casual afterwards. Yeah. But I've been in very good meetings. I've had a fair number of meetings with one person, a customer, who puts a time limit of 20 minutes on their meetings, and say, right, the meetings start now. You're supplied with the agenda beforehand, so you should have read it beforehand if you want to bring anything up. And the meeting lasts 20 minutes, and after 20 minutes they finish, and that's it. And which it can be very good, but I agree with basically what you say about good leadership, so that it doesn't wander off course, sticks to the subjects on the agenda, and also that person makes sure that everyone who should be giving their input is allowed to as well.
Yes.
Rather than allowing certain people just to continue to go on talking on and on, and other people may not get an input.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's important that the right people are given the opportunity to speak. Definitely. Yeah.
And also visuals. I mean, when I have to organize a meeting, I tend to use a lot of visuals, especially giving a presentation. I prefer to show something, for example, on PowerPoint, or than have long discussion, long talks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find them much more interesting, and people seem to gain more, or listen more, concentrate more when you have some. You're not only talking, but you're showing slides or Excel sheets and graphs and so on.
Yeah, those are important. I agree with that. Well, one of the things that I liked is one of my directors actually was very good at this. At the end of the meeting, he would do any other business, but he wouldn't just say, has anyone got any other business? He would go around and ask everyone in the room, is there anything that you would like to discuss? So that everyone was given the opportunity to say, no, I'm fine. Or actually, there was something I wanted to talk about, rather than just an open, has anyone got any other business? Right, quick, shut up, we can leave and go. He actually left it open and asked every individual in the room whether they had something, and that I thought was that was a good way of doing it. Yeah, because some people might be overawed by the situation, particularly if they're a junior member of the team. They might feel as though they might not be, should I speak up, should I not speak up? But that was a way of making sure that everyone got to contribute if they had something important to say.
I also think it makes sure that the ambience of the meeting is well prepared. For example, you haven't got disturbance or potential for people to walk into the other part of the office, and everything is accounted for. If someone arrives at the office, there's someone who is concentrating on that, so that the people in the meeting can concentrate in a quiet and reasonably the sort of environment where you can concentrate. It's all about organizing beforehand, so that
it is. Yeah, I agree. And have a sign on the door: meeting in progress, do not disturb, or let the secretaries know that there's going to be 10 people in the meeting room. Please make sure it's not disturbed. And has someone checked that the lights are all working and there's not one of them that's flickering and things like that. Simple little things that can make such a difference to anyone in a meeting room. But it as you say, it's just about taking the time to have a little thought about it, make sure that everyone's got everything they need and no one's rushing around at the last minute, so that everyone knows what's doing. And it's important that those little attentions to detail, they help things run smoothly.
Yeah, I've been in bigger meetings. I have to go to ethical meetings when there's probably could be 50 people there. And quite often you find the back doors left open. And so you get this group of sort of accumulate at the back door, who then start their own, as you were saying earlier, start their own chatting, meeting at the back, which can be really disturbing for other people in there, who are actually trying to concentrate.
Yeah. That really annoyed me, actually, meeting someone else chatting down the bottom when there's a meeting going on. That really did annoy me, and I have actually said from time to time, can we have one meeting here, please? And people would look at me and think, ooh, you're getting a bit cheeky, but actually I'm not. If you've got something important to say that we need to all hear, then let's do it so that we can all hear it, because you might come to a decision that I know nothing about that might impact what my team is doing for the rest of the week. So it's important that we all know what everyone else is doing, so that we understand how all the pieces fit together, particularly in a multidisciplinary project that you can be working on. But there's the chatting down the bottom end and leaving doors open, so that people walking past, you can hear people walking past and chatting, and sometimes people having arguments in the corridor outside, and all these little things just really great with me. The office should be professional enough to say, hey, there's a meeting going on in there, and then give it the respect that it deserves. Yeah, definitely. I got anything else? Oh yes, the other usual things is setting a date for the next meeting.
Yeah, in the pre-organization so you're
Yeah, so that you know,
and trying to avoid continuous changes of meetings. I know some people who, so 5 minutes before a meeting's supposed to start,
yeah,
they'll then send out another invite to say that the meeting has been changed to next week because they found themselves too busy and can't attend, but there's 4 or 5 people waiting
yes,
to start the meeting, that sort of thing, just to make,
yeah, yeah. You know, if you're going to have a regular meeting, have it Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock and have it every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock or every second Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. Don't suddenly go to a Wednesday morning at 11, then a Thursday at 2, then back to a Tuesday at 9. Be consistent, because it's important that people can then schedule their diaries and make sure that they're available and have prepared. And that's the other point, is make sure that you've prepared, have your own aspect of what you work in, have your own little statement of progress. It doesn't need to be something that you necessarily share if you don't want to, but you can, if you're asked, you can say, you know, we're okay, we're doing well, we've had these challenges, but we've dealt with those, just so that so that you can convey what you and your team are doing, and how it fits into the overall scheme of things. Because sometimes construction projects can have a lot of people, and when you get a lot of, they call them stakeholders. They started to call them stakeholders when I was in construction in the 90s. We've got to make sure all our stakeholders are on board, and all that fancy terminology for people in a meeting. But it is important that everyone gets the opportunity to be present, be prepared, and contribute. And if there is an argument or a contentious point, you know, it's down to the leader, the chairman of the meeting, to step in and either have that aspect taken out of the meeting and dealt with separately.
Yeah, just one point on the leader. I think the leader has to have a good concept of listening as well to people, because I've been in meetings where maybe I haven't been able to or explain myself clearly, but trying to explain that they're missing a point which could be quite fundamental, and then they've sort of rushed on to try to get a conclusion quickly, but
Yeah.
I know all the time that their conclusion is wrong because they haven't listened to what I've said.
Yeah.
Or I've been trying to explain that, whereas if they slow down a little bit,
yes,
and allow time for me to explain a little bit better. That another times when they have done that, they said, "Oh yes, of course, yes." I'm not saying I'm always right, but just to try and allow people to be able to explain things clearly, because someone who's trying to rush a conclusion can miss things. Someone who's leading a meeting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is important. It is important that that the right amount of time is given so that something can be resolved if it's possible to resolve, and you make the right decision at the end of it. It's, oh, excuse me. Yeah, it is important that happens. So meetings can be a minefield for people with Asperger's or autism, because there's so much going on. There's lots of people, and as we've said before, and I've said before, people are my biggest challenge in life, and in professional capacity at work. I always, my greatest challenge was working with people, because their agendas weren't necessarily the same as mine, and it could lead to conflict. So good, strong leadership in a meeting is really important, so that everyone gets their say, and you move the meeting forward. You know, you should be further forward at the end of the meeting than you were when you walked in the door. If not, then something serious has gone wrong, because you know, you have to move the project forward. You've probably got staff, resources, equipment, you know, at your disposal, working away in the background, doing other, you know, working on the project. And if you're not given the adequate information on where you should be proceeding, then you're just wasting time, and that you know, that is something that you need to avoid. And the number of times I've had to redo things because people haven't understood or haven't wanted to understand, it's very frustrating. So it's really important that the meeting is led well, and everyone has their contributions listened to. Yeah, very important. I don't think I have anything else to add to that, Damien.
No, I don't. That was very good.
No, thank you. So I'm going to just make a little statement that if anyone is watching this on a replay on my YouTube channel and they want to know more about how you can support and help people with Asperger's syndrome in meetings or in work, then I would welcome the opportunity to talk with you for a free consultation. So with that being said, I'm going to turn off the recording. No, not that button.